Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Deez, this is my workshop. Today we're going to continue the micrometer stand project. This will be part 2. Hopefully part 2 will be the end. If not, we'll make a part 3 as well. My goal for today is to at least get the slot milled in the base so that we can mount our upright portion that goes in here, and we want to drill and tap into this piece so that we can mount it, and I want to countersink for cap head screws on the bottom side of the micrometer stand. That'll hold this securely. I'll probably just put 2 screws in the bottom. I don't need to overkill it. In addition to that, I think I would like to accomplish today figuring out what angle we're going to put on here for the mounting portion for the mechanism that will actually hold the micrometer. I would like to finish those operations today, and if we have enough time, we'll keep going and maybe start figuring out how we're going to make the mounting mechanism. I've got some ideas swirling in my head, and we'll find out what that ends up looking like when we get to that point. Let's get down here and mark this piece off. We'll do some measurements because this needs to be, I want this to be pretty accurate for the thickness of the upright piece. So we need to measure that up, get some numbers written down, and then we'll head back over to the mill. Okay, we don't really need to measure, because I'm going to use the DRO to find the center between each side. So that part I'm not too worried about. But what we do need to do is measure the thickness of this piece so that when we use an end mill to bring that down, maybe an 1/8 inch, maybe a 1/4 inch. 1/4 inch might be too much. We'll check and see what we're looking at, but we need the thickness of this piece. All right, the thickest portion of this is 0.462 on one end. Clearly my mill is probably, or my vise, or the way that I mounted the material wasn't mounted or trammed properly. Had to be the way I had it in the vise, and maybe there was a chip or some dust underneath it, but we have just a couple thou discrepancy between one end and the other, which for this project is fine. That might be something I look into improving in the future. But for today, we're going to shoot for 462, 463, just so that it's a tight fit, but it slips in there nice and easy enough. I don't have enough travel on my y-axis, so what I'm going to do, I've measured this. This is 3062 on one side and 3064 on the other. I'm just going to average it, split it, 3063. So the first thing I'm going to do is find my edge, and then I'm going to have 3063, and that'll be my center mark. calculation mistakes, but I fixed it. We need 1.8015. Negative, of course. So let's clear that one more time. We're still where we need to be. There's another calculation mistake. This is, I think it's 200 thou. So I have to accommodate for that as well. 200 thou. So the center of this, since the way that I'm trying to figure this out, I need to also include that 100 thou, which is half the thickness of the end. So let's do our math. We have 3.603 plus 100 thou. 3.603 plus 0.100. I need to divide that by 2, and that should be my half, 18515. So we'll put that negative 1.8515. That, now if we bring that across, we should be at our center mark. We're pretty close. Let me think a little bit smarter here. Again, this is all about figuring out how to get the center without being able to measure to both sides. I don't have the Y travel that I need. I've already found my 0 on the end. It's a 200 thou thick round tip that's on the center finder. So what we need to do is, that's the edge, but it's 100 thou out. So I need to bring it over 100 thou. And that's the center. Right there. So that's going to be the center. So we want to clear that. We know that it's 3.603 is the number we're looking for. So 3.603. We want to divide that by 2. That's 100 or 1.8015. So let's add a negative. Let's change that to negative 1.8015. And now if we bring that all the way across to 0, that will be center of this material. Right there. And we can further clarify that or confirm that if we bring that over. If we want to manually check that a little bit, we can use our caliper to just do a quick rough check. 20210. 20080. 2 thou discrepancy. It's actually not 2002. It's the center. It's center enough for this project. So you just use your DRO. You got to think a little bit creatively sometimes in order to find the center line. This is probably beginner stuff for most of you watching, but me, I'm still learning and I'm figuring things out. Now that we have our center, now it's time to figure out the end mill we're going to use, how thick the end mill is, and find our center line, and then make sure that it's going to be thick enough and not too thick for our upright. We're going to touch off of here, and then we'll figure out what kind of depth we want. I think that's a good reason to use my visual depth gauge that I made at one point. If you remember making this, it was a fun little project. But we can visually see since this isn't critical, we're just looking to key in the upright. Let's see what's visual. I mean, if we do 250 thou, a 1/4 inch, I think that's excessive. We certainly don't need that. I was thinking a 1/4 inch at one point, but that's this length right here. That's too much. We're just looking to key it in. I'm thinking maybe 150 thou. That even might be too much. Maybe 100 thou. 100 to 150 thou. I like both of those. I think I'm going to go 100 thou. So I'm going to make a 100 thou key for my upright. And this was a good use of my visual depth gauge, and exactly why I made that. So 100 thou it is. 100 thou depth of cut. But what we want to do, I've already figured out the math here. The cutting surface of this is 310 thou. That is, 312.5 thou. That's a 5/16 end mill. So I did the math. 312. I want the total thickness, the thickness of the plate, which is 462. So I want to do the math. We subtracted 312.5 from 462. I divided that in half, and we ended up with 0.075. What that means is I need to cut a slot here, come over 0.75, and then cut back, and then come back 0.75, and come back again. And we do that, I'll probably do 25 thou depths of cut, maybe 20 thou depths of cut until we get to 100 thou depth of cut. First we'll just touch off, and then we'll start making cuts. I'm going to start with a 10 thou depth of cut and see how this operates. I don't want to break the end mill. .25 thou depth of cut for that cutter, and this steel is too much. We're going to go back and take our time, and we'll do 10, probably 15 thou depths of cuts. I think it could handle 15. So let me fix that. This is going to take a while. I'll bring you back when we get closer to having the 100th thou depth of cut. Just going to go back and forth until we get there. Well, now it's time for us to drill the holes. I didn't take this out because I've already got my center line set with the DRO. So I thought let's take advantage and do all the operations we can while it's still centered up and accurate within the mill and the DRO. So what I'm going to do is drill the through holes for the screws that are going to mount to the bottom of the vertical upright piece. We're going to use 1/4-20 cap head screws. Now, I'll countersink the bottom side of these, but since, like I said, since I have everything centered up, I want to go ahead and get the through holes drilled before we do any countersinking or any of that. I'm just going to come down through the top. We'll chamfer all the holes, and then we'll flip it over, and we'll countersink for the cap heads. Then what we'll do is flip this end for end, and we will chamfer. Well, we'll chamfer all the holes. Chamfer all the holes, and then we will countersink the bottom. And then we'll deburr that whole thing. The bottom piece will be done. Then what we'll do is transfer punch for the threaded portions for the top piece, because we'll have to tap for that. But for now, let's go ahead and get our through holes done. I did the math. This thing is almost 4 inches wide. It's about 3.9 inches wide. I did the math. We're going to go 1.3 inches in for both holes, and that should space out evenly 2 holes for the cap head screws. There we go again. I didn't hit record. However, I went ahead and drilled these holes, these through holes for my cap head screws, chamfered the holes, and those fit nicely. So that's what we needed to do for the base. The next thing I'm going to do is flip this end for end so that I can chamfer the bottom side, and then we can take this out and deburr it using a file and clean all this up. Then we need to transfer punch our holes for the top portion to get it mounted. Let's get this flipped around, and hopefully we can line it up and get those chamfered. So I think, since I need to countersink these anyway for the cap heads, I'm not going to deburr that yet. Let's take this out, and we'll use our drill bit to line it up. We're going to do a 1/4 inch depth of cut, and this is a 10 mil. I need to go 390 round, but I'm going to use the 10 mil end mill. Well, we got our piece cut out. We've got it deburred. And as anybody in this hobby knows, just small operations like this take forever. I've been out here all afternoon doing chores and stuff, but you know, things like this just take a long time. And I'm actually trying to slow down a little bit anyway, take my time and not make goofy mistakes. Just getting this slot centered, just so that I could make sure everything lined up well, that was something I really wanted to do. This is all part of practicing and learning for me. Remember, I'm a hobbyist and new and learning, and I continue to learn. So that's really what these projects are about. Ways to sharpen skills, practice things. Most of my projects are probably called apprentice projects, you know. So we got our slot made, and let's do a test fit with the upright here. That fits in there real nice. Really good. That's what I wanted. It fits in there real nice. Just a little bit of play so it's not, you know, unmanageable. And again, you saw me, I went with 100 thou versus you know, a 1/4 inch. I thought a 1/4 inch would be too much. You saw that we used our depth gauge for that, the visual depth gauge. Came in handy. I was able to kind of visualize what I wanted to do. The next thing we need to do is transfer punch this. We did get our recesses made for the screw cap heads, cap head screws, and those will not be proud, so that when this is mounted and laying on the bench, they're not going to protrude out the bottom. That's going to give plenty of threads to engage into our upright piece. But the next thing we clearly need to do is do a transfer punch and then drill and tap this material, and then that base piece will be done other than cutting the corner. Let's go ahead and get our transfer punches done and then get this drilled out. Just need to figure out what orientation I want this in. I think something like that is what we want. Right there. Let's see. Go. So now we just need to drill and tap those. We need to go down about 650 thou in order for the screw to fully engage and get in there, but I think I'm going to go 680, 700 thou. I got plenty of material, so let's get going. Well, everybody, as much as I hate to do this, I'm going to make this a part 2 video. This has taken a lot of time, but my projects aren't just about the project. They're about me sharing my learning process and improving my skills and techniques and just using the machines and using the different tooling, the face mills, the end mills, the drill bits, the taps, the dies, all that stuff. And I like to share it. This is part 2 of my micrometer stand. Like I said, sorry for the short videos, the broken up videos. This might seem like I'm dragging this project out for different videos each week, but that's not the case. This takes me an entire, a couple days on the weekend to get some of these projects done, just to the stage that you're seeing them. Just trying to do what I can, get content out there, but more importantly, I'm trying to take my time and learn the machines, learn the cutters, learn the techniques, get my centers on spot on where they need to be so that all my pieces fit together nicely. And so far, this one's turning out really well, turning out like I wanted it to be. Thanks for watching, everybody. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you stick with me for part 3. That will be the finale. I'm not going to drag it out any longer than that. And if you haven't subscribed, please do. It really helps out the channel. Thanks for watching, everybody.